And we have lesser of nationalism and patriotism sentiment in Western Europe as compared to Eastern Europe.
Yeah, but, you are vigorously shaking your head.
Well, I disagree. I think there is an economic divide between Western Europe and Eastern Europe.
Definitely.
There's no doubt about that. But you also look at the political economy there. You've got to look at the attitudes of people there. They're slightly more progressive in their attitudes towards people and humanitarian affairs. Their systems are built more on social welfare. That's very important.
No, haven't you seen the recent rise in Germany, the Islamophobia
campaign? That was Islamophobia. That was a reaction to what was going on in the world. That was not a direct.
Aren't they reacting
that
to this?
Not a direct reaction in any way whatsoever to the refugee crisis. That was more.
No, that was previously happening. When you say that they're more liberal.
That was a more a reaction to the
attitude of the Turk Muslims that are living there?
Not just the Turks, because actually when you look at the Germans, the majority of the population that is Muslim in Germany is Turkish.
Yeah.
And the type of Turks that went to Germany.
No, my question is, when you are saying the Germans are more liberal, kind of,
I still find
and taking a lighter view of the things, why didn't they take a lighter view of the Turk Muslims?
You've got a minority taking the highlight in the media, and they're having rights, but you look at Angela Merkel and a lot of the leadership, most of the leadership, and then the population went out to go against
that's
this
what I'm trying to understand,
racism.
what the politics is going on.
We've got to recognize that there's small minorities that take media attention, and people think the whole country's changing, like you've got the EDF that's disbanded virtually in England, because they no longer recognize, and there are those people who are not so educated, working class.
One last thing.
Who want to
before I go to
racism.
One last thing before I go to Bakr. Do you think the Syrian refugees or the aspirant immigrants are so much understanding the political dynamics in Eastern and Western Europe before deciding their final status?
I think what is more important is that when you've got a more defined, fairer system of governance in a particular country, which recognize, and if you look at England, for example, I believe, even now, even after all the problems that occurred in England, that it's probably the most liberal country in the world.
Yeah.
There's a reason for that. I can go there and say what I want, and nobody can put me in prison or use violence against me. There is an increase in violence against Muslims by 70% increase, for example. But they're minorities, and there are local people, uneducated people, and racists, which are minorities.
Okay, I'm not talking about England.
What I want to talk about here is the fact that when somebody sees there's a welfare state, they see that they can get benefits, and they see there's a government with rules, that say that they can achieve asylum, and there are loopholes there, people can take advantage of that and have a better life.
Okay, Bakr, do you agree with this, that they are more welfare state and there are loopholes and they are more humanitarian towards the asylum seekers, or there are some economic factors as well?
I think there are two sides to that. When we speak of refugeeism in the whole continental Europe, you would better talk about the Nordic countries or Scandinavian countries. So why the Nordic countries are not opening their doors to these refugees?
Yeah.
This is a big question. So if we talk
They're the richest.
Yeah, they're the richest. And in terms of social securities,
they're more liberal.
They're more liberal than the
smaller economies.
But smaller, they're not smaller economy, come on.
Compared to England and France and Germany, they're very much smaller economies. They can't sustain.
But in comparison with Hungary and Austria, they're big economies.
They are to an extent, but look at the difference between the route forward.
Why don't they go to Nordic countries?
Look at the distance.
Okay. If you are able to reach Hamburg, why can't you go to up north?
That's another point. You've got to look at the
my basic question was, why their target is Germany? Why aren't they stopping in Austria, in Italy, in Greece?
There's no form of conspiracy. It's a mindset of the people who have gone there already.
Perhaps they don't have the information.
There is a proximity to this. There is a proximity debate to this. So when you look at Austria, Hungary, and Germany, Austria is very proximal to Germany, so that's the next door for them to
go. Why not they are stopping at Italy or maybe at Greece?
No, that's a far place to go.
Yeah.
So you either
come to keep on their journey. Okay, why don't they stop at Egypt? Why don't they go to Turkey? There are the closer places. If they are coming out of Syria.
That is a question of where is the concept of Ummah.
No. I'm just asking that these refugees who are trying to find their next home, why aren't they stopping at the nearest possible place? Why are they going for the best of the best? They have the choice. I want to go to the UK, I want to go to Germany.
They are humans and they can use their rational choice.
No, so it means that they are not going for the immediate possible thing. They are losing lives, they are losing their children, they are losing their families, but they eventually want to reach the best of the best.
And because they have lost a lot.
So this is not a humanitarian crisis.
Because they have lost a lot. So you wouldn't want them to lose two things at the same time. One, they left their homes.
I may be sounding a bit curt.
No, I get your point completely. I understand why they're going for the absolute best rather than get for the immediate needs, because they're getting out of a war.
Yeah,
they're
going
to a local environment.
Turkey maybe Egypt.
Well, let's look at it this way. Turkey and Egypt, two Muslim countries, they have had a dream of something better in the West.
Yeah.
The opportunities there, the lack of repression, for example, that they received.
And Turkey is, by the way, one of the biggest refugee
Turkey is probably the most aggressive Muslim country there is.
Yeah. And I think that's a big mistake. The Syrians have settled a lot in Turkey.
I was in Turkey just a few weeks ago.
They have settled a lot who are close to the northern border, who have been affected by the ISIS. But the people who are fleeing through the sea, and they know that this is a horrendous journey of maybe of weeks, why aren't they stopping to the nearest beaches?
So we cannot generally call it humanitarian crisis. It is, in the language of international law, it will be seen as humanitarian crisis because they have to flee from their home because of the crisis over there. But beneath it, there are lots of other dimensions to that, economic dimension, social dimension, political dimension, as you might have read.
But I am asking, if I have to sacrifice my family at the expense of reaching the best place on earth, should I do that? Then should I be considered as a humanitarian crisis?
There is a humanitarian crisis that's been taken advantage of. That's what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
I agree with that to an extent. Now, you're a father, you have children, you've got a wife, you've got maybe elders with you, and you're trying to get them across. You see no future in where you are. You had in your mind something further. You don't even have in your mind something like Greece, because it's going through a crisis itself. Hungary is not so much exporting its culture environment.
Yeah.
You may settle there, but you see something in your mind. It depends what the media attention goes to.
I have read a story about, there are so many very tragic details that are coming. I have read a story that he started the journey with a wife and 4 children. He lost one child somewhere near Egypt. He lost the second child somewhere near in Sicily, and he lost the third child somewhere near Austria. So why he keeps on losing his things? Why can't he settle down at the first available slot?
That's a personal decision you're going to have to discuss with that person who did that, actually, because I can't see what is in his mind. But when the large population does this,
what pushed them out of their country? We know that.
Yeah, push them out. We do understand that. But if I am under stress, so, okay, let's move on to the other neighboring countries. What about Saudi Arabia? Why aren't they opening their borders for them? Why they're asking 200 mosques to be built in Germany for the refugees who are going there?
At the moment, we have 500,000 Syrians living in Saudi Arabia, according to the Humanitarian Department, United Nations. So,
are these the direct outcome of the present crisis or the previously settled?
No. They're people who settled there.
Who settled, yeah.
So, and Saudi Arabia is not a signatory of the UN refugee things. So you find out that there's a new dimension to that. But the other question is, what about the
Don't tell me about this bureaucratic thing that they are not a signatory to that. They can welcome anybody in their soil.
They're not. So Saudi Arabia has always been very much sensitive. So when you look at the graph of the expatriate, even expatriate, I'm talking of expatriate now, in different Gulf countries, Saudi Arabia is the least.
I hope you're not carrying a bag for King.
I hope the King recognizes the argument.
There's a valid point here. Yeah. Why isn't Saudi Arabia, Dubai, Qatar, Bahrain taking people in?
Yeah.
They're the richest economies in that region. They've got the money to accommodate, even if it's for a short period.
To an extent, even Jordan can take it.
Jordan can, and it's taken a lot. Jordan has taken a lot, and it's a poorer country, so Jordan's doing what it can. And there's a porous border, and a lot of people have gone across there already. But why not the others? Now, you'll say, Saudi says, this is more counter-terrorism issues. I don't think so. I don't think they want to take anything. You just mentioned they want to pay for 200 mosques in Germany. Yeah. The Germans are worried that this is Islamization of Germany. Yeah. But a lot of these so-called conspiracy theories, some of them tend to have some truth behind it. Nothing comes out of nowhere. There's no vacuum there. There's always something there.
If you look at Pakistan, that we have been hosting around 3 million refugees for about 20-30 years now, and now the people are understanding that what is the cost of taking in the refugees. You have recently been to Europe, and you have been living there also. Do people appreciate this thing now, since this thing is right on their borders?
I don't think. The funny thing is, we haven't highlighted this issue lately, given that we've been through this problem for the last 30 plus years.
Yeah.
We should have highlighted it more, indicating what the costs and effects are.
Yeah.
Especially when...
You are worried about 4,000 people. Yeah. Look at 3 million people.
3 million plus, and we've had them for generations now.
Yeah.
And there is a cost and effect. And actually, most of them, the younger generation that grew up here, born and brought up here, has become Pakistanis to an extent. But the difference is here that we're not highlighting it in this country so much. Yeah.
Not even in the international media?
I don't really think we're doing enough about that to indicate this is what the problems are, this is what happens, and this is the cost that is going to occur there. But our economies are not like the Western economies either. But let's look at it this way. Let's go back to the Gulf. People come in, they may see, because they're closer to us, they may see what the effect may be because of what happened in Pakistan. But we took them in because we also made a decision to resist Soviet occupation of Afghanistan. So we made a decision to take people in because that was the effect that was going to occur, because we made a decision to fight against Soviet.
Why can't the UAE or the Gulf states, they take a decision onto this, because they are the closest, then they could have traveled to this part of the world, if economy is the reason?
I think the simple answer would be this. One is the social pressure. The social pressure is always there, and the population explosion is always there. So you look at these countries, they have a very small population, and so you're opening the door for these refugees to come. They're kind of having this fear of demographic explosion, and I think
why can't then the Europeans have this demographic explosion? Because even they are the Arabs largely. They speak the same language. They share the similar feelings and the cultures. They will be aliens in the Eastern or Western economies. Why can't they come over here if the doors are open?
I do agree with that, and that is the failure of our Muslim policies or the Islamic world. So I repeat the word, where is the concept of Ummah in this old dimension.
Doesn't exist.
But where is OIC?
It doesn't exist. Where is it?
Where is OIC?
This is the fantasy that people live in. It doesn't exist. Since the international state system came about, Ummah finished. The whole idea of Ummah is negated by international state system and a propagation of international state system by these Gulf countries, by the Muslim countries to maintain their borders, actually absolutely detrimental to the idea of Ummah. So when somebody talks about
we will continue this discussion, ladies and gentlemen, but it's a time for a very short break, and when we come back, we will be discussing some of the elements that we have not yet touched. Please take a break. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We have been talking about the Syrian civil war and the crisis that has given birth to international refugee and immigration crisis, particularly in the eastern part of Europe, that may be spreading over to the Western Europe as well. Let's continue our discussion. Aqab, we have been talking about the Pakistani role, and we have been doing all this for the Afghans, and that was a conscious decision made by our own part. But we have not been highlighting this thing. So is it perhaps the point that perhaps the time that we restart our efforts to tell the people that we need more help in this conflict situation?
I think the countries that are taking in the refugees are the ones who are going to highlight it more than us, because we're coming through the issue after 30 years plus, and I don't think we've highlighted it enough in this current environment of migrant crisis, which is in Europe predominantly.
Yeah.
Not in this region, by the way.
But perhaps this is the time that we restart our efforts.
But when we raise this circumstance that we've suffered from this, and we made a decision to take people in, and they're still refugees, by the way, under the law. And
although most of them have become Pakistan nationals.
They become Pakistan nationals, they're contributing to the economy, they're making businesses, they've got educated here, taking jobs, etc. So contributing to the economy, and on top of that, a lot of the refugees who have gone back, went back to Afghanistan with skills that they couldn't acquire because of the conflict environment in Afghanistan, which means they're contributing to the economy in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
So the direct impact that Pakistan has had is very positive. People don't look at that effect. But when we're looking at those people who go into Europe, they're unlikely to go back unless a decision is made for only keeping them for a particular period of time and then sending them back to rebuild their economy when the conflict environment subsides a little. But which is highly unlikely because the life there would be better than it will be in Syria for a long time to come. So we need to highlight this to indicate what's happened, but that might also deter a lot of the European countries even more so.
Okay, Bakr, if you look at the European economies at the moment, and as we are expecting that it's highly unlikely that people are going to go back, how do you see the Eastern, particularly the Western Europe, if you're talking about France and UK, are they going to be affected in a longer run, or their social makeup is going to be changed?
I feel the current crisis in the European zone will kind of become a deterrent against opening more door to the refugees. This is a very clear fact. When you look at the southern part of Europe, they're already in a mess, economic mess. The Eastern European Union, European members are not better off. Only for the Western Europeans. And with this continuing crisis going on, Europe will find itself in a big mess. And like I want to say, that we need to see this humanitarian crisis or this immigrational crisis from an historical perspective, that how come Europe continues to open its door to foreigners? So at one point in time, they were seen as guest workers. At one point in time, they had an agreement with countries in even Morocco's in Middle East. So you find out that this current humanitarian crisis is the next step of immigration towards Europe.
Let's try to look into the future. For the moment, at least on the German street, we are seeing the people are coming out, they are welcoming them, they're giving food, flowers, blah, blah, blah. But do you really think that once they settle in, of course they will be doing their lives, they will of course doing their religious chores as well, and they may be also expressing their thoughts as well. So are you expecting in the next 1 or 2 years any more turmoil as far as the politics of the region is concerned?
Definitely, because the question of radicalism is on bear. One. Number two, the rise of these rightist, nationalist, nativist is there. Number three is the economic crisis. So Europe has to manage itself, constraining its humanitarian so-called welcoming these refugees. So we want to say that the door might be open to refugees, but European policymakers will still go back to the indoor to find out how to manage this crisis. Because I believe Europe is not ready to commit the same mistake as they did in 1950s and the 1960s, where they welcomed a lot of immigrants, but they were not prepared for them because they felt these immigrants should
Are they prepared this time?
This is the same question.
Either no.
This is the same question. They wouldn't fall into the same pit twice.
Look at it this way. Look at a circumstance that may occur. I've been reading reports and ISIS, whether it's highlighted or not, whether it's false or not, false propaganda is another issue. But there could be an eventuality like this where certain people from ISIS are going over as refugees and then consolidate themselves and attack those countries. Look at the impact that will have on the refugee crisis and the backlash it will have on those refugees who are really there to survive.
And I think this is bound to happen. This
I think it may well do.
It's only the question of time when it's going to happen.
So the highly likely mechanism to stop that.
Well, it's very difficult to stop that. You can't stop that unless you've got mind-reading equipment, which is not there at the moment, is it? So at the end of the day, what you're really talking about is you're going to take in a risk, and they're very much aware of that.
No, this very fact is deterring them to take a decision.
No, but look at this then. Germany understanding the risk, Britain understanding the risk, other countries understanding the risk are still taking people on. Doesn't that show a very humanitarian side to their countries, especially?
But don't you think that these people who are going to be accommodated into their countries, they will be under special eye, under the...
No doubt they would. And why would you not? Why would you not? If it was coming to my country and I was there, I would keep an eye out.
No, we have a very open experience here. We didn't want anybody.
But my point is, if you were doing that, I'd keep an eye on them.
Okay.
I have an hunch.
Yeah.
I have an hunch. My hunch is this, that the European policymakers would not create the environment of settlement for these refugees.
Yeah.
They will melt into the society?
No.
Okay.
They're going to create a kind of environment, a kind of isolated environment for them, in a way to
Can they sustain that?
in a way to find a problem, to find a solution to the problem.
They are not
in the
there
Middle East.
as criminals to create a special facility for them?
No, I'm not looking at it in that
or
Nazi
some kind of
space.
ghetto that may be created?
I think you're looking at a situation what happened in the Second World War when the internment camps happened in the United States for the Japanese, for example, when all the Japanese were interned into camps to keep an eye on them.
We're not looking at this scenario.
I don't mean
that
against that way. No.
Well, what's in your mind then? What are you expecting? There's some growth of some settlements here, like the Israelis had for them?
They're
for
not
the
going
Jews?
to. They wouldn't melt them with the society.
You can't oppose that. It's going to happen by nature. It's going to happen.
They need to find a solution to the crisis in the Middle East. This is the cause, and we have to look at the cause. Otherwise, this whole crisis will continue to expand.
That's what we are expecting at the moment. This is going to happen, and one fine morning we may listen a terrorist attack in Berlin, maybe, or then everything will
fall into a mess, and everybody starts looking at their budgets, military budgets again, and interfering even more. Then that's a problem. But you're not going to be able to stop all these refugees from melting into the population. It's just going to be virtually impossible.
If that happens, then you are going to see the Europeans as ambivalent. On one hand, they are ready to accept. On the other hand, they are ready to close the door. So
that's always been the case.
So my hunch is this, that they wouldn't allow them to melt